Hello guys, welcome back. It's Illogical as always, and today we're going to be doing a tier list for the thrusting swords. Obviously, all of these weapons have been tested with a 40-40 quality build, and I will be handing you the stone hard facts as well as sprinkling in a little bit of my own opinion at the same time. So while we're at it, let's get into the first weapon. So the first weapon that we are going to be covering is the rapier itself. So this is basically your bog standard base weapon. So this should technically be this is the blueprint for all the weapons to come afterwards. So it comes with a one-handed damage of 395 and a two-handed damage of 431. This does put it, I think, at just about in around the weakest of the actual rapiers. So it does. It comes with a B scaling on both sides of strength and dexterity on a quality setup. It comes with a standard weapon moveset as well as a swap weapon art, basically throwing in whatever you want. My favorite being Glintstone Pebble, especially for its mix-up potential. And then it comes with a 130 crit modifier, which basically, long story, means that this thing, if you hit with if you manage to land a parry and you end up riposting them, you are more than likely going to outright kill them with the lack of vigor in a lot of builds. The main benefit to this weapon is the fact that with it having a flexible weapon art, having it use Glintstone Pebble will give you an awful lot of offensive potential, and just alone with that extra crit legitimately means that any ripostes that you do is going to hurt. And with the rapier being as dangerous as it is, there's only one place it can really go, and that there is into the S tier. It can go into the S tier for one of two reasons, and that there's its use of Glintstone Pebble and its riposte capabilities. With the way that riposting works in this game and the way that people aren't leveling vigor, you're going to end up decimating anybody that you're able to parry. Next up, we have the Noble's S-Stock. Now, this is one of the weapons that might take you a wee while to farm, but it is basically a royal version of the S-Stock. It is somewhat slightly weaker, somewhat of a carbon copy, if you would call it that. Its damage is 421 one-handed and 459 two-handed. Comes with dual scaling of BB in strength and dexterity, respectively. And it has a standard moveset with unique heavy attacks, aka the sweep, that is unique to the S-Stock class. It also has the swap weapon art, so basically throw in your Glintstone Pebble and you'll be as good as pie. There is only one problem with this weapon, and that there is simply down to the fact that it is a carbon copy of the standard S-Stock. So with all that being said, there's only one place for it, and that's B tier. If it's outclassed by the S-Stock, I'm sorry, but there's only one place for it. And now we get to see why the Noble S-Stock is where it is. You have the standard S-Stock, which has higher damage at one-handed being 125 and two-handed being 463. Same scaling, same everything. It's just higher damage. It is the two weapons are identical to each other, bar the requirements to be able to wield them and the damage output that they do. And because the S-Stock comes with more damage, there's only one thing I can really say and do, and that there is put it in one tier higher, and that's really all I can do. Because on that there, the Noble S-Stock and the S-Stock are basically the same weapons. They are identical in so many ways. It's just the S-Stock comes out slightly on top. So realistically, there's only really one place that we can really even decide to put it, and I've already said where it's going into A tier. So it's outclassed as the Noble S-Stock, but it just doesn't have the same fear potential as the Rapier does. But now on to a weapon that has the fear potential that it actually deserves, but not for the same reason as the Rapier, the Cleanrot Knight Sword. This is the highest physical damage Rapier so far in the game at 442 one-handed and 482 two-handed. Again, it is a carbon copy of the Rapier, bar it doesn't have, actually no, it's not a carbon copy because it is leagues stronger, so it is, than any Rapier that comes behind it. This weapon is feared purely off not even the fact that it can hit hard on a riposte, it just hits hard as a weapon itself, so it does. And everybody knows, if anybody's watched my Rapier videos up until now, They all know I love pairing my thrusting weapons with glintstone pebble for mixed up reasons. If you're running it for weapon art reasons, the clean rot knight sword completely dominates the entire spectrum whenever it comes to just pure damage. So it does. And on top of all that, there, because its damage is so high, even the crit on it is still destructive with that high base damage. If you want, you can fight me on it, but at the same time, everybody knows where it was going. It was going straight into S tier for simply just being flat out the strongest of the rapiers. Whereas the standard rapier may be the second weakest, because I'll be correcting that in a later part. It may be the second weakest, but it has substantial crit. The clean rot sword just has raw damage. So it does. That's all it has. It just has raw damage with a fantastic move set. How do you even argue? And next up, we have the mix of the two S tiers, Roger's Rapier. Now, there's a reason why I'm calling this the mix of the two S tiers. Its damage one-handed comes in at 413, and its damage two-handed comes in at 451. So it is basically in the middle. In terms of raw damage, it is between the Rapier as well as the Clean Rot Sword. Comes with double B scaling, has a standard moveset but with a unique double thrusting heavy. So it does, and it also comes with the ever so calmly known the swap weapon art, because throw what you want in. As it says, I prefer the Glintstone Pebble. And this is why I call it the mix of the two S tiers. It has a crit of 110. It is a fine weapon. It does work. It would just need a somewhat of a better build built around it. It won't function just as well on a quality build. There are other builds that would probably be able to make use of it. But my justification is the fact that it is the jack of all trades, but the master of none. So, taking exactly what I've said into context, it can only go into A tier. It is still a fine weapon, but it is simply the fact that on the two things that it is trying to do, it is unfortunately sorely outclassed. It is outclassed on its riposte damage by the rapier, and it's completely outclassed by its raw damage on the clean rot sword. So unfortunately, Roger's rapier sits happily in A tier. On to our next weapon, which is probably going to be the one that most people want to see, and that there is the Onspar Rapier. Now, I have actually a good bit to talk about with this weapon, so I do. Now, first off, its damage one-handed comes in at 416 one-handed and 455 two-handed, meaning it is also middle of the road in terms of damage. Comes with standard BB scaling on a quality build, standard moveset, and it comes with a standard a weapon art swap. So it does. So again, my personal preference is Glintstone Pebble. Here's where the shenanigans come in. It's the rot buildup. This weapon has the ability to build up Scarlet Rot. So this was something that I had overlooked in my previous um, tier list whenever I was looking at weapons. It was the mental state of your opponent. This weapon has a unique way of building up panic with your opponent. Now, clearly, I can't. I don't think in the entirety of that video I proc Scarlet Rot once, but it did force people to play a lot more sparingly than what they would have normally done. It put them defensive more so than you would actually think. And then because of this, I just remembered back that there are other status effects that can be used. For example, bleed. Bleed is a good panic tool as well if it's on the screen. If you see somebody building bleed, poison, scarlet rot, death, you immediately start to panic and you immediately start to compensate for that reason. And I only ever understood this whenever it came to this weapon in particular, because this is whenever I noticed it. People that I fought became so much more passive in their combat. So for that exact reason, I can only put the Onspar Rapier straight in at S tier. It is just how well it does its job. So it is, and how well it can initiate that. with the addition of the mind games being played and the extra offensive tool that you have in your kit, as well as just your opponent's natural mindset to any affliction, be it bleed, scarlet rot, poison. It immediately puts them either on a timer or on the back foot, naturally forcing them to play passive and giving you more openings, or even worse, and this did happen once, it will make them go full blown aggression on you and try and mow you down before the timer is up, which it makes them make mistakes. Long story short, this weapon forces your opponent to make mistakes, and that there is something that is absolutely invaluable in duels whenever things are quite strict. Strict movements, no kidding around. The Onspar Rapier is a devastating mental weapon. And then on to the one weapon that I had great expectations for, but was sorely disappointed. The Frozen Needle. It is the weakest of the rapiers at 409 one-handed and 426 two-handed. A scaling of D in strength and a B in dexterity. It has a standard moveset, and for here I have written standard weapon art because it comes with Impaling Strike, which has poor range. It comes on all the rapiers, but it's unfortunate that this weapon has nothing unique about it, bar its unique heavies, which turn into a projectile. But the projectiles are so easy to dodge and they do little damage. You can also proc frost, but you can barely break someone's poise. This was one key argument that I didn't have with the other weapons because their damage and weapon arts were there to make up for the lack of poise damage that this weapon has. It's unfortunate, but this weapon simply isn't good. So, taking it simply, the Frozen Needle unfortunately is outclassed by everything else. So, it's a C tier weapon. Don't use it until it needs a buff. I'm not saying don't use it. If you pair it up with something else, maybe pair it up with another rapier or pair it up with another one of itself, use it and duel with it. It has potential. But as it sits by itself, it is simply not worth using as it lacks in so many key categories. In my simple opinion, it does require a substantial buff to make it anywhere near what it needs to be. And there we have it, our final tier list. If you've got anything you want to say, put it down in the comments and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. But as it sits, I am very happy with how this turned out, so I am. And I can't argue with it. This is just my own personal research and my own personal opinions on the weapons. So it's a coin flip at that point. But if you have any issues, don't feel free to comment to me, and I will do my best to get back to you. So I will. And to end it all off, please like, share, and subscribe. I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye.